Let's start with let's summing up here. So let's start with the tournament standings, meaning that now Vishy Anand and Hikaru Nakamura are joined in the lead with +1 each, meaning they have 1.5 point out of 2 in the normal counting, but here 3 out of 4 because the classical games count double here. And let's just take the 3 games here. Let's start with the game that we've just looking at here. And it started out pretty slowly with a declined Berlin here with d3, and then he played this knight d4, which you mentioned that you had looked at that, Christof, right? And concluded White had a slight edge in that position, right?
I don't. It's not like I'm a huge expert, but the thing is, when you go e4, e5 with black, you very often want to trade the c6 knight because it's often misplaced when the pawn appears on c3. So it's often tempting to do, but it takes some time. And we saw that White was somehow having a slight pull, and very often it happens in those lines.
Exactly. And he did, I think, because I think we agreed that White had a very, very tiny edge in this game here. But then it became very interesting because this was all pretty normal, I think, the knight coming to c4. And then White set up this annoying pin with bishop g5, which is often annoying in some of these positions here, and Caruana now took what I thought was quite a lot of risk. That now he started advancing on the king side to break the pin, and I actually did not really like that. I thought that this was taking a bit too much risk because the king was stuck in the center. So I actually liked White's position here. Black played in the center with d5, which certainly makes a lot of sense. But Black's king is exposed until the end of the game, which we basically also saw. So I actually liked White somewhat in this position here. I think you agreed, right?
I think it's at least easier for White, because you have the safe king, and when the position opens up, which is sort of the normal tendency in a game of chess, it very often will open up at some point. Then your king is the problem, and this is what happened actually. We are not sure where the big mistake was, but Black was in trouble.
That requires some more analysis here, but clearly White gets the better of it here, and I tend to suspect that it's because of Black's king being a long-term liability. He gets a good square for the knight here coming to f4, but now I think Karjakin plays this phase of the game excellently here, opening the game here with d4, basically reminding Black of his weak king, and knight g4 we like rook a d1 2 as well here, but knight g4 was okay, and now Caruana goes for a forcing line here, but I think it gets the better of it because of this strong rook takes e4. Taking with the f pawn would have allowed Black to take on d4, but now instead White sacrifices the exchange, and I think White has more than enough compensation if Black grabs the exchange, because he will have 2 bishops, he will have very well coordinated pieces and very nice pawns here in the center. So Caruana instead decides just to play with the pawn down, and I'm not sure that is enough for Black. It shouldn't be enough for Black. I think White should be better in this position, but it's probably a good practical decision. Especially in time pressure.
Around here, I think must be the crucial stage. I mean, just a hunch, but somewhere around here it should be. When he allowed this liquidation with rook takes e5, I think...
exactly. His next few moves here do not seem to be the most accurate ones, especially this knight e5, I think, because now he allows a liquidation where Black finally takes the exchange and then immediately gives it back on e5. And that allows Black to trade also the dark squared bishops and keep his knight on f4. There was always throughout the game the threat of White going bishop e3, of getting rid of that knight on f4, but now he can't do it. So I think Black is even the one playing for a win in this position. But Karjakin manages to find some good moves in time pressure. King h2 was vital to prevent a check on b1 where his king would be exposed. And now he liquidates with e6, forcing black to take that one. And then after queen takes c6, they agreed a draw. I thought we had looked at something like this, and then a perpetual check or queen d3 and perpetual
like that
check
will probably happen. Yeah.
Yes, or queen d3 is perhaps even more accurate to give the checks here on g3 and e1. So an interesting game, finally ending in a draw here, and clearly I think it's a pretty decent result for both of them. That they are clearly still in the running, but Caruana is probably the most happy to have avoided a second loss after the loss against Nakamura yesterday, and Karjakin may feel a little bit disappointed that he didn't get more out of his good position. But they are still in the running. So we had a very interesting draw between Kramnik and Nakamura, where it started out actually pretty slowly as well, where both sides had other options of trying to create some more play here, but then we actually felt that White got some advantage out of the opening here, because he has this very strong bishop on this diagonal, which is clearly better than the counterpart on c8. So White has a slight edge in this position for sure. But now from here on, Nakamura plays very well, very good defense. Bishop d7 is a great move. He basically accepts to lose a pawn, first to get an isolated pawn on d5, and second, then to lose that pawn in terms of some activity. I'm still not sure that White needed to take that. Maybe rook d1 or e4 or something were alternatives.
I was just thinking, if he is not taking, Black might play bishop c6 and is okay, right?
Yes, bishop c6 is what he wants to do. I was only thinking about e4, but I don't think it's very much for White. White also has not developed the knight on b1 yet. So bishop d7 was an excellent defensive move by Nakamura, forcing this situation here, and he plays rook c8. He's basically willing just to give up that pawn for activity. Maybe White should not go after that pawn, but just play a solid move like bishop d4 and then knight c3 and try to develop the pieces. But Kramnik goes for a forced line where he wins the pawn or tries to win the pawn. Take here, take d5 and e4. And this was Kramnik's idea, that he wins back the piece with an extra pawn, but then a very, very good practical decision by Nakamura here, giving up the queen for rook and bishop. I have a feeling White has better ways to play it than what Kramnik does in the game. Maybe queen e2 or something to get rid of that bishop on e4. But Nakamura defends it very confidently here. Rook c4 is a great move here. The rook is active on both ways here. Rook e1 and just getting some luft for the king. Queen e5 and bishop c6. And it turns out
he managed to get rid of the queen side, yeah.
Exactly. So b5 and then rook e8. And if queen a1, then Black would just grab on e1 here and even win a pawn on b5. And Black may even be starting to play for a win here. So Kramnik takes a pragmatic route of just going into a rook endgame that is just completely drawn here. a5 here as a b pawn, and then it's just about getting rid of the queenside pawns before getting to move 40, which they have to make before they can agree a draw. So a couple of more moves, and then at move 40 they agreed a draw. So a confident draw by Nakamura in a position out of the opening that we did feel was a bit dangerous for him. And then we had the game of the day, clearly, the win by former world champion Anand against former world number 2 Aronian. And this was really a great game by Anand. And I'll be curious to find out how much of it was preparation. But Aronian, I think, made a mistake by going for this sharp line in the Grünfeld Indian that was also on the board in the World Championship match between Anand and Carlsen, because Anand clearly came very well prepared. It seemed that he out-prepared Aronian in this game.
Yeah, he probably never expected this opening to be played, but he could use the preparation that he had from the World Championship match.
Sure. And now what happens is very interesting, that Aronian goes for winning a piece here, takes on c3. Of course, the queen cannot take, because then the bishop will be hanging on e2. So he has to take here. And then he also loses a bishop. But after queen takes b7, he gets a monster pawn on d7 in exchange. He cannot take on a6, because then rook b8 would be winning for black. But d7 was the idea, and black's pieces are simply much too discoordinated here that it seems white has more than enough compensation for the piece, at least in practice. And it may well be that requires more analysis, but it may well be that bishop c6 was the decisive mistake. We looked at some lines with rook a5, knight d2, and then bishop takes g2, trying to get counterplay against white's king side. That's something that requires much more analysis. But what happened in the game was bishop e4, then white went queen b3, bishop c6 then, and now white simply is winning with rook d6. Way too many black pieces hanging on c6, and then if e6 falls, then on a4, and rook g6 is also, rook takes g6 is also a threat because of the pin. Aronian gives the piece back and goes into an endgame, but this endgame is totally lost for him, because f7 is weak. These knights here are uncoordinated, and he just loses one of the knights. Rook takes g6, wins the one knight, and rook takes a6, wins the other knight.
Yeah, all those uncoordinated pieces start to drop now.
Exactly. And then after rook e1, he was just a piece down and resigned the game. So really a great game, and a good win for Anand, helping him to catch Nakamura in tied for the lead, and we will have a lot of interesting rounds still to go in this tournament. Will you sum up a little bit, Christof? What was your impressions for today?
Yeah, I think it was an interesting round. I must admit that in those very small field tournaments where you only have 3 games, you sometimes have those kind of snoozer rounds. Yeah, there are like 1 or 2 draws, and then there's just 1 game going on and so on. But here we had some interesting fights. The Anand-Aronian game certainly had some tactical fireworks. Yeah, and it would be interesting to learn how they assess the situation, why Aronian went for the opening at all, and how much of it was known by Vichy beforehand. Yeah, then we had the interesting time scramble between Karyakin and Caruana, where Karyakin certainly had the better chances at some point, but didn't make the best out of it, so it ended in a draw. And we had Kramnik-Nakamura, where Kramnik looked good out of the opening, but really couldn't get anything concrete against Nakamura's interesting defense involving this queen sacrifice that seemed to hold the position quite comfortably. Yeah, I guess you will be doing game of the day to be put on the site later, so it probably will be Anand-Aronian, I guess.
This is clearly the game of the day for sure, and maybe even for a long time. There will be a lot of theoretical debates among proponents of the Grünfeld Indian about this game, I'm sure.
Yeah. Okay. I also like to thank all the listeners and watchers of the video feed.
Thank you. Yes.
Watchers, is this a word? And also thanks to channel 165, people participating in the chat. I hope you enjoyed our broadcast, and don't forget to tune in also tomorrow is a round, right? Tomorrow.
Yes, I think they're playing every day. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, with 5 rounds, it's doable. So we'll be back tomorrow at 3. I mean, not we as persons, but the ICC broadcast will be back at 3 tomorrow Central European Time or 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I hope you enjoyed it, and hope to see you tomorrow. Bye.